picture-perfect couple, deeply in love and full of excitement for their future together. They had recently celebrated a grand wedding, filled with family, friends, and laughter. The ceremony was nothing short of magical, blending traditions and modern elegance. After months of planning, they were ready to escape the wedding buzz and begin their new life with an unforgettable honeymoon. South Africa was their dream destination, a place known for its breathtaking landscapes, vibrant culture, and luxurious resorts. It was meant to be the start of something beautiful, a once-in-a-lifetime adventure filled with romance and joy. The couple landed in Cape Town, a city bursting with life and stunning scenery. The towering Table Mountain watched over the city, and the ocean waves kissed the shore as if welcoming the newlyweds. They checked into a lavish 5-star hotel, eager to explore everything the city had to offer. From the moment they arrived, they were swept away by the warmth of the people, the rich aromas of local cuisine, and the promise of unforgettable experiences. During the day, they wandered through bustling markets, hand in hand, admiring colorful crafts and tasting exotic fruits. They visited the iconic Victoria and Alfred waterfront, where the sun sparkled on the water and street performers entertained the crowds. Shreen wanted to make sure Annie experienced the very best, a romantic getaway where every moment felt like a fairy tale. In the evenings, they dined at high-end restaurants, enjoying candlelit dinners and toasting to their future. Annie, radiant and full of life, laughed easily, her eyes sparkling with happiness. They talked about their dreams, their future home, and the family they hoped to build together. It was a perfect honeymoon, the kind most people could only dream of. One evening, they decided to venture beyond the tourist spots. They wanted to see the real South Africa, the vibrant streets and lively townships where locals lived. It felt like an authentic way to connect with the heart of the country, to experience the culture more intimately. Shreen arranged a private taxi to take them to Gugulethu, a township on the outskirts of Cape Town. Their driver, Zola Tongo, seemed friendly and accommodating. He agreed to take them on this off-the-beaten-path adventure. The night air was warm, and the city lights twinkled in the distance as they set off. The streets gradually became quieter, less familiar. The colorful buildings of Cape Town faded into rougher, more industrial areas. Annie leaned into Shreen, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was an unfamiliar part of town, but they trusted their driver. He assured them everything was safe. As they drove deeper into the township, the atmosphere shifted. The lively sounds of the city were replaced by eerie silence. The taxi slowed down unexpectedly. Out of nowhere, 2 men appeared, blocking the road. Before they could react, the car doors flew open. Armed men stormed in, their faces masked and voices sharp. Everything turned into a blur of panic and fear. The couple was separated. The attackers forced Shreen out of the car, leaving him on the side of the road. He was dazed, helpless, and watching in horror as the vehicle sped away, with Annie still inside. Her terrified screams echoed into the night, growing fainter as the car disappeared into the darkness. The cold night air bit at Shreen's skin as he stood on the side of the road, heart racing, his mind spinning in panic. One moment they had been a happy, carefree couple exploring a new country. The next his wife was gone, snatched away in a blur of violence. He couldn't move, couldn't think. His voice trembled as he called for help. But the streets were eerily empty. His only thought was Annie. Where had they taken her? Was she scared? Was she hurt? He felt powerless, frozen in the horror of what just happened. Time dragged painfully. When a passerby finally stopped to help, Shreen could barely get the words out. He was rushed to the police, his voice trembling as he explained what had happened. He pleaded with them to find Annie. Every second felt like an eternity. The police, familiar with the dangers lurking in some of Cape Town's rougher areas, sprang into action, setting up roadblocks and searching for the hijacked vehicle. While officers combed the city, Shreen's mind raced with possibilities. He clung to the hope that this was just a robbery, that the men would take their valuables and let Annie go. Maybe she was already on her way back to him. Maybe she would walk through the station's doors any second now, shaken but unharmed. He refused to believe otherwise. Hours passed, the longest of his life. Then came the news that shattered his world. The taxi had been found, abandoned on a desolate road far from the city lights. Inside, they found Annie. She wasn't moving. She wasn't breathing. The brutal reality set in like a punch to the gut. His beautiful wife, the woman he had promised to protect, was gone. Annie's lifeless body told a story of violence and cruelty. She had been shot. The joyful, radiant woman who had laughed with him just hours before was now a victim of something unspeakable. The dream honeymoon had turned into a nightmare beyond imagination. Shreen collapsed in grief, his cries filling the room. He couldn't understand how this had happened. They were supposed to be safe. They were supposed to be celebrating their new life together. None of this made sense. The authorities reassured him they would find who did this. South Africa's police were determined. This wasn't just an attack on a tourist couple. It was an international tragedy that would shake the world. News of the horrific murder spread fast. The media swarmed Cape Town, hungry for details. Annie's family in Sweden was devastated. Their daughter had found love, married a successful businessman, and embarked on a dream honeymoon, only to meet a violent, senseless end. Their pain was immeasurable. Investigators worked tirelessly, tracking down the taxi driver, Zola Tongo. His involvement quickly came to light. Tongo confessed, leading police to the other men involved. The hijackers were arrested, but their stories didn't match up. Something wasn't adding up. Why would they take Annie and leave Shreen unharmed? Why murder her after taking their valuables? The pieces didn't fit together. The police began to dig deeper, and what they found would twist the case in a way no one saw coming. The investigation moved quickly. South African authorities were under immense pressure. This wasn't just any crime. A newlywed tourist, brutally murdered on her honeymoon, had captured international attention. Reporters flooded Cape Town. Headlines screamed for justice, and the world watched closely. The police were determined to find the truth. Zola Tongo, the taxi driver, became the key to unlocking what really happened that night. At first, his story was simple. They were hijacked by armed men, and he was just as much a victim as the couple. But something about his version didn't sit right with detectives. He seemed nervous. His answers were inconsistent, and his timeline was shaky. The more they pressed him, the more his facade crumbled. It wasn't long before Tongo cracked. What he revealed changed everything. He claimed that the hijacking wasn't random. It wasn't a tragic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to Tongo, Shreen Duani himself had orchestrated the whole thing. He alleged that Shreen had approached him days before, asking for help to stage a hijacking, one that would end with Annie's murder. The room fell silent as Tongo described the chilling details. He claimed Shreen offered him money to find gunmen who would make the killing look like a robbery gone wrong. The plan was meant to be quick, clean, and believable. Annie wasn't supposed to survive. Investigators couldn't ignore the confession. If Tongo was telling the truth, this wasn't just a robbery. It was a calculated, cold-blooded plot. But why would Shreen, a man who appeared utterly broken with grief, do something so monstrous? The motive wasn't clear, but the allegations were too serious to overlook. The police began piecing together the events leading up to that night. Surveillance footage from the hotel showed Shreen and Tongo meeting privately before the hijacking. Phone records revealed calls and messages exchanged between them. The evidence started stacking up in ways that painted a disturbing picture. Meanwhile, Annie's family was reeling. They had lost their daughter in the most horrific way imaginable, and now they were being told her husband, the man she loved and trusted, might have been behind it all. The thought was unbearable. Shreen had seemed devastated, pleading for answers and comfort. Was it all an act? Was his grief a performance? As the investigation deepened, more arrests followed. The two hijackers, Mzwama Dodekwabe and Zola Mjini, were taken into custody. Their stories aligned with Tongo's confession. They admitted to being hired for the hit, claiming they were paid to carry out the murder and make it look like a random attack. They described how Annie begged for her life in the final moments, unaware the nightmare was never meant to end any other way. Shreen, who had returned to UK after Annie's death, now found himself at the center of an international scandal. South African authorities pushed for his extradition, determined to bring him back to face the accusations. He denied everything, insisting he was a victim, not a mastermind. His legal team argued that Tongo and the others were criminals trying to shift blame, making him a scapegoat to save themselves. The media frenzy exploded. Some believed Shreen was an innocent man caught in a web of lies and corruption. Others were convinced he had played everyone, using his charm and wealth to hide a dark secret. Public opinion was divided, but one thing was clear. The truth was more twisted than anyone could have imagined. As courtrooms filled with lawyers, reporters, and grieving families, the world waited to see whether Shreen Duani was a heartbroken husband or a cold-blooded killer who had turned his dream honeymoon into a deadly trap. Shreen Duani's life had turned into a whirlwind of accusations, media chaos, and legal battles. Back in the UK, he stayed largely out of sight, but the pressure was building. South African prosecutors wanted him extradited, determined to have him face the shocking allegations head-on. His legal team fought back hard, claiming he was too mentally and physically unwell to travel, citing severe trauma and depression after Annie's death. While Shreen remained in Britain, the trial in South Africa moved forward without him, first against the men directly involved in the hijacking and murder. Zola Tongo, the taxi driver whose confession had blown the case wide open, pleaded guilty to his role in the crime. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. His testimony laid everything bare. He described how Shreen allegedly approached him, how they discussed a staged hijacking, and how he recruited the two gunmen to carry it out. He claimed Shreen promised him 15,000 South African rand for his part in arranging Annie's murder. The two other men, Nzawamadoda Quabe and Zola Mjini, also faced trial. Quabe admitted to the murder, confirming Tongo's version of events, and received a 25-year sentence. Mjini, who was identified as the man who pulled the trigger, was found guilty too, though his terminal brain cancer complicated the sentencing. Each confession added another layer to the nightmare. The killers describe how they drove Annie to an isolated area, how she cried and begged for her life, and how they shot her once in the neck before leaving her die alone in the abandoned car. The brutality of it all was unbearable to imagine, especially for Annie's devastated family, who sat through every detail in the courtroom. Still, the biggest question remained unanswered. Was Shreen really behind it? Or was he an innocent man, manipulated by criminals looking for a way to lighten their own sentences? After a long legal battle, Shreen was finally extradited to South Africa in 2014 to face trial. He appeared thin and pale, his once confident demeanor replaced by a fragile, hollowed-out version of himself. The world watched as the case unfolded, each day bringing more twists and emotional gut punches. Prosecutors painted him as a man leading a double life, a wealthy, successful businessman who wanted out of his marriage and allegedly saw murder as the easiest way to get there. They introduced claims about his personal life, suggesting he had secrets Annie didn't know. Witnesses testified that Shreen had sought out male escorts before and during their marriage, fueling the prosecution's theory that he felt trapped in a relationship he no longer wanted. They argued that he feared the backlash of a divorce from his traditional Indian family, so he staged a violent, tragic escape from his marriage, one that would leave him a widower, free from judgment. The defense fought back hard. They argued that Shreen was a loving husband who had been targeted by opportunistic criminals. His lawyers pointed to inconsistencies in confessions, reminding the court that Tongo and the others had cut deals for lighter sentences. They questioned whether the men had shaped their stories to protect themselves, turning Shreen into a convenient villain. Throughout the trial, Shreen sat quietly, often looking down or away as the gruesome details of Annie's final moments were retold. He appeared broken, a man overwhelmed by grief and the weight of the accusations. His defense team hammered home the fact that no physical evidence connected him to the murder, no texts, no phone calls, nothing concrete to prove he gave the order for Annie to die. The courtroom became a battlefield of emotions. Annie's family watched Shreen closely, searching for answers in his expressions. They had once welcomed him into their family, trusted him with their daughter's happiness. Now, they were torn between believing he was a victim too, or the man responsible for their unbearable loss. The truth felt just out of reach, buried beneath confessions, accusations, and conflicting testimonies. The world waited to see whether the man who once stood beside Annie, smiling for wedding photos and planning their future, would walk free or be condemned as the mastermind behind her murder. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the final days of Shreen Dewani's trial unfolded. Every seat was filled, reporters scribbling notes, cameras waiting for a verdict, and Annie's family watching with hollow eyes, desperate for answers. The prosecution had built a narrative of betrayal and manipulation, painting Shreen as a man living a double life, trapped in a marriage he no longer wanted. They claimed he planned the entire thing, hiring local criminals to turn a dream honeymoon into a deadly setup. The defense, however, pushed back just as fiercely, arguing that Shreen was a victim, a grieving husband caught in the crossfire of criminals who saw an opportunity to shift the blame. Shreen himself remained largely silent throughout the trial, letting his legal team fight his battle. He looked frail, a shadow of the man seen smiling in wedding photos with Annie just weeks before her death. His eyes stayed low, avoiding the family he once called his own. His grief seemed genuine to some, but others saw it as a carefully crafted performance. Public opinion was split. Was he a broken man or a master manipulator? The judge finally took the floor. The room fell into an unsettling silence as everyone waited to hear the fate of the man at the center of it all. One by one, the prosecution's claims were dismantled. The judge criticized the reliability of the key witnesses, Zola Tongo, Quabe, and Genie, pointing out that each of them had cut deals for reduced sentences. Their testimonies, filled with contradictions and changing stories, couldn't be trusted beyond reasonable doubt. And just like that, the verdict was delivered. Shreen Dewani was acquitted of all charges. He was free to go. Gasps filled the room. Annie's family sat frozen in disbelief, her mother breaking down in tears. They had spent years believing that justice for Annie would come through this trial, and now, the man they believed responsible was walking away. Shreen showed little emotion, perhaps too drained to react, or maybe just relieved that his nightmare was finally over. But the end of the trial didn't bring closure. If anything, it left even more questions behind. South Africa's justice system had spoken, but the court of public opinion wasn't as forgiving. Some believed Shreen had gotten away with murder, using his wealth and connections to outmaneuver the legal system. Others felt he had been dragged through a living hell, accused of something he never did, forced to relive the worst moment of his life over and over. For Annie's family, the pain didn't stop with the verdict. They returned home without the justice they so desperately wanted, left only with memories of the vibrant, loving woman they lost. Annie's father, Vinod Hindocha, spoke to reporters, his voice shaking with emotion. He said they felt betrayed by the legal system, but no court ruling could bring their daughter back. He vowed to keep her memory alive, even if the answers they sought never came. Shreen returned to the UK, but his life would never be the same. He avoided the spotlight, staying out of public view. His once thriving business took a back seat to the scandal that followed him everywhere. People whispered when they saw him, some staring with pity, others with suspicion. The honeymoon that began with laughter and promises of forever had ended in a way no one could have imagined. A young bride murdered, a husband accused, and a story that will haunt them all forever. Even now, the case remains one of the most disturbing and debated crimes in recent history. The truth, whatever it may be, is buried with Annie on that lonely road in Cape Town, where a dream vacation became a nightmare the world will never forget.